power plants and land are on the agenda of Donald Trump's phone call with Vladimir Putin. What will Ukraine look like after a peace deal is struck? Is Europe ready for it? And is the Kremlin willing to sign it at all? To discuss it and more, we're joined by Diane Francis, political analyst and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
So first of all, what do you expect from the Trump-Putin call? Do you think that a general consensus has already been reached and the both leaders are only there to announce it, or will the negotiations continue?
Well, you know, there's a lot of disinformation that's flying around online. For instance, there's information that, the Ukrainian army in Kursk is about to be crushed. Apparently not true. There's information that Witkoff, Trump's negotiator, was left standing and never met with Putin in Moscow. He was stood up by Putin. Who knows whether that's true? And now we have Trump saying, good news, we're working quickly. We're going to come up with a negotiation arrangement soon. Of course, all of that I'll believe it when I see it. And, Trump knows the kind of position of Europe and Ukraine. Security guarantees are essential. This business of power plants is a new one. You've got a power plant in Kursk that's no longer surrounded by Ukrainians, but you've got one in Zaporizhia and Chernobyl that are surrounded by Russians. I don't know what he's playing at here. Is this a form of hostage taking that he's trying to scare the Americans into giving up too much, or what? So, we're sort of in chaos here, and I really don't think there's any credible noises coming out of the Russians or the Americans at this point.
So if the negotiations are to continue, indeed. Now, Donald Trump, during the last meeting in the Oval Office with Volodymyr Zelensky, has told the latter that, quote, you have no cards. Right. So I'm wondering what cards does the US have to play this game with Russia? And I'm also wondering whether Vladimir Putin is attempting to play Donald Trump as well.
Well, the Russians have, what we do understand is that the Russians and Americans who have been sitting down talking about this truce and have been stringing along Trump with promises that they will help him deal with Iran and its nuclear ambitions and help him isolate or control China. If he's believing that, then he's really, very naive. Obviously, Russia's two greatest allies are Iran, who supply weapons, and China, who supplies technology and buys all of its oil. So, he's hardly going to double cross them. And that seems to be the whispering going on into Trump's ear to get him to not be as vigorous. Trump has all the cards because he can flood Ukraine with weapons to make Russia's life more miserable. And he can also double or triple the sanctions against Russians, companies, oligarchs to make their life more miserable, put oil caps on, intervene with oil transfers by ship, and so on. He's got a lot more cards than Putin has at this point. He doesn't seem inclined to use them or even threaten them. So we're going to have to see what happens. I think that so far the Russians have got the better of him.
Right. So Donald Trump is putting pressure on the Kremlin. But are there any signs indicating that Russia, in fact, wants to end this war?
Russia has always been in the position of being able to end this war since 2022 when it invaded Ukraine. It could have stopped at any time. Could have said, okay, we want peace, we're ending this. They don't. They haven't. They still haven't. And so right now they're playing a game of trying to stall it out so they can hopefully gain more territory. And we see that this has already worked because it looks like they've regained some of the Kursk. This is just a strategy to when they finally decide they want to end it, that they will have gotten as much territory from Ukraine as they possibly could have.
Now, the Europeans are scrambling to help the situation. Now, how successful do you think will be this so-called coalition of willing, and will they play any part in these post-war architecture that we'll have in Ukraine?
Well, it's essential that they're there, and it's also essential that Ukraine still has an army. Putin doesn't want either, and the Americans are not willing to put boots on the ground. And so, there is no peace, and there is no peace at all if there isn't a means by which Ukraine can protect itself from, yet another invasion by Putin. This is his second. His ceasefire lapses are in the dozens. He doesn't listen to ceasefires. And, the question is, even if he finally says, okay, we'll do a 30-day ceasefire, who's going to enforce it? Are the Americans going to enforce it? What if somebody breaches the ceasefire? So there's none of this that's been disclosed. And it's very kind of odd, the whole thing. And Trump badly wants this to end, which is a good thing. I think we all do. However, it's all very fuzzy. It's very strange. And he has more cards than Putin, but he hasn't been threatening them lately. And he's got to whack them with sanctions. The other thing, too, is Europe. Europe's got to put together the coalition of the willing. But, Europe is still buying oil and gas from Russia, has been through the whole war. I mean, that's treason. That should never have been allowed. That should have been stopped. And it wasn't. So, I don't think anybody except Ukraine has behaved virtuously.
Mm-hmm. Now, Andrei Ignatov is the new head of Ukraine's general staff. Now, this comes amidst reports of a collapse of the Kursk operation, despite many different reports. Now, is this decision, in your opinion, purely politically motivated? We remember what happened to General Zaluzhny, and was it intended to find a scapegoat for the failure of this whole Kursk incursion?
It's odd timing, given the situation right now. So I don't have deep sources inside the military. All I know is that the Ukrainian military is exceptionally professional and exceptionally talented. It's probably the best armed forces in the world right now in terms of digital and drone technology. I mean, they run circles around everybody. Their problem is manpower and shortage of ammunition. It could be political. I doubt it. And their bench, to use a hockey term, the bench is strong, meaning there's not all the players are on the ice, but the ones that are sitting on the bench ready to go on the ice are just as good as the ones on the ice. And so that's sort of my opinion. But you wouldn't make a change like this unless there was something absolutely necessary, and it's not because of any failure in Kursk, I don't think.
And lastly, something else, although very much connected. US President Donald Trump has cut the US Agency for Global Media to the bare minimum funding levels required by law, thus depriving several hundred of people of their jobs. I'm talking specifically about Voice of America and Radio Free Europe / Radio Liberty. Now, what's your take on that?
Well, Voice of America and Radio Liberty, I think, have probably served the purpose they needed to in years past, and they were very important, and they were a beacon of light, and it was critical to get information on the other side of the Iron Curtain or the Bamboo Curtain or whatever. And we know that was very valiant and very gallant and very wonderful. Now I would argue that with the internet, with cryptically protected means, whether it's WhatsApp or Signal, that people have access to now, or the social media, You know, there's really very little that is hidden from the world now because everybody's online. The other thing that's really important to remember as well is that, you know, Google years ago started to translate everything. So language barriers are no longer a problem for people around the world. And so I'm not saying they've lost their usefulness, but there's another issue too, that these particular not-for-profit organizations were run by people, I would guess, who are mostly not Trump supporters. They're a left of center, they're very liberal, and that sort of thing. So it could have been a little bit of, well, we'll get rid of you because you haven't been loyal. Number two, if that is the case, and I think it is to a certain extent, that's really not a good news, a news outlet, because you want unbiased information, just facts and figures. So I would say now that with the huge amount of digital availability worldwide in any language whatsoever, the need for a specific beacon of light from America to tell everybody what's going on is no longer necessary. Although I think that, you know, we should pay homage to the great work that was done in the past.
Diane Francis, political analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, and a well-renowned and world-renowned journalist as well was our guest tonight. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.